interest rates are rising and the property market is going to slow down. No, I'm lying. I'm just saying that. So I want to talk about interest rates are rising. Well, what does that actually mean? Does it mean property prices are going to tank in the future? I don't think so. And I want to talk about what happened back in the day when interest rates were at a whopping 18%. Yes, that's correct. A whopping 18%. And when they went from 18% and they dropped right down, and what happened to the property market. So let's jump into it and I'll explain a little bit about what's going on. So here are interest rates from 1990 to 1994. Okay, interest rates were close around that 17 to 18% mark. Okay, now they dropped down to 9% in the space of 4 years. Okay, as you can see, it's from the RBA. So this is from the Reserve Bank of Australia. So as you can see, interest rates go up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Okay, and people think it's as you can see, they go up and then they come down, and sometimes they go down a lot further than what they go up as well. And so, as we can see, back then there wasn't a property market boom during that time in every area. Every area was a little bit different. So I want to show you exactly what I mean and what happened during those times. As you can see right here, Sydney, Melbourne, from 1990 to 1994. So as you can see, from Melbourne went from 131k to 127k to 125k, and it started dropping. Okay, and then it started to pick up a little bit the market after that. But during that time, from 1990 to 1994 in Sydney, same thing, 194k to 182 to 183 to 188, and it started to drop and then started to pick back up. But if we look at from 1990 onwards into some other markets, places like Adelaide, it went from 97k, 103, 108, 111, 113, and then started to go backwards. Okay, after 1995. Same with Brisbane. Brisbane 96. It went to 96 to 113, 120, 129, 136, 143, 147, 148, and it started to keep continuing. And interest rates were going up, and they're at 17%, and they started dropping down. Okay, so and same once again, I can touch on here with some other markets like Hobart and Perth. Perth was started to take off, went from 99 to 102, 112, 123, 126, 126, and kind of started to plateau. Now, as you can see here, I want to show you that if we go back from 1994 onwards or 1993 onwards, Sydney and Melbourne started to kind of take off, as you can see here. What happened again with the property? What happened with interest rates again? Interest rates from 1994 to 1996, they went up and then sideways. Melbourne and Sydney started to take off during that time, which is pretty cool. And what we saw back then. So interest rates from 1990 to or 1989 to 1994, they dropped dramatically. And as you can see, it's just rate after dropping. Melbourne and Sydney didn't take off. Of course, during this time, there was places like Perth, Brisbane, and Adelaide that took off. Okay, when interest rates started to drop, Melbourne and Sydney didn't follow that trend. As soon as interest rates started to go up, the property market in Melbourne and Sydney started to take off. So let's take a look again at that data, but let's fast forward it and go towards the early 2000s. So here we are. If we have a look from 1995 or 1994, we'll say here, and go onwards. Okay, here's Sydney. Okay, once again, Sydney and Melbourne, these first two columns. Sydney started to take off, went from 192, 196, 211, 233, 248, 272, 287. Okay, and then it started to continue. Same with Melbourne. Melbourne started to take off as well and started to follow that trend. But if we have a look as well, when the interest rates were dropping as well, you have a look at Brisbane. Brisbane started to take off as well, and then it started to slow down, but it still kept that trend. Adelaide still took off and started doing quite well, as you can see. And not every region was following that trend, but it was pretty interesting to see that interest rates were going up and going down, and the property market wasn't really starting to take off, if that makes sense. It wasn't taking off during that time. So if we have a look, and I go back to this, have a look at what happened here. If we had a look at these times when interest rates were back in 1987 to 1990, interest rates went up, okay? They went from 13% to all the way to 17%, okay? So it's a big jump. If we have a look here from 87 to 90s, if we have a look at Melbourne, Sydney started to take off, interest rates went up. Same with Melbourne, property prices started to take off. Same with Brisbane, property prices started to take off. Same with Adelaide, property prices started to take off. Same with, of course, with Perth. Same with all other capital cities as well. Okay, property prices take off, but what happened when interest rates went up? So what am I trying to show you? I'm trying to show you and teach you that it's not all about, property prices going, interest rates are going up or down. That's going to affect the property market. It's about where the property market's in its growth phase, what it's doing, and depending on the circumstances. Now, back then in the 80s and 90s, the property market was a little bit different, and a lot of things happened in a different way of how things used to inflate. Of course, there was a big thing of internal migration. Of course, overseas migration. A lot of people migrating to Australia as a very young country, and property markets started to take off. As you can see, Darwin and Brisbane didn't really have a property market in the I guess. If we go back to the 70s, early 70s, there was no really property market data at all that we can get that can capture all that. But if you have a look, Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, they were probably the three big cities that had a lot of things going on at that point in time from a property perspective as well. Property prices were more expensive in Perth, believe it or not, in the 1970s compared to Melbourne. So it's quite interesting. Of course, Melbourne started to get more populated. Property prices started to follow that trend, and that helped a lot as well. So what I'm trying to say is, don't always get caught by the headlines that saying property prices are going to crash because interest rates are going up, or vice versa. It doesn't always work that way. I showed you just here before that when interest rates were at in 1990 to 1994, there was a retract in Melbourne and Sydney. Okay, property prices went negative. Okay, but interest rates started to drop, and they dropped dramatically. They dropped nearly 10% of its value. So you'd think the property market would take off in Melbourne and Sydney, but it didn't. But in the other regions, it did. So from 2002 to 2008, Melbourne and Sydney's market actually done nothing once again. And that's, I can once again touch on that. I don't want this video to drag on too long, but this is something to show you from the history of what happened in the past and what's going on now, and how it doesn't really make a big difference. Okay. Hopefully you got a lot of value from this. Hopefully you learned something new about interest rates, about what's going on and what the future actually holds. Interest rates are going up. Are they going to go up next month? We don't know. There might be a slowdown, there might be a stop to it, of course, and they're going to let inflation catch up. But I still see growth in some other regions across Australia, and the data doesn't lie when you see places like Queensland, WA and South Australia still continuing their growth trends, and you have places like Victoria or maybe more like Melbourne and Sydney are actually retracting. Same with Hobart retracting, same with ACT retracting, and starting to see a slowdown, of course. But there are some regions, of course, across Victoria and New South Wales that are on fire, but a lot of those places are regional towns and not capital cities at all. So hopefully this gives you a bit of clarity, a bit of certainty, a bit of faith, a bit of time to actually, maybe if you are in a position where you can invest and you can afford it, to actually start educating yourself and learning what actually drives the property market and looking at historical trends. Most importantly, to look at the historical property trends. That's the one thing that gives you clarity and certainty. Everything is very cyclical. Everything is cyclical in life. Okay, so keep that in mind. Same goes with recession. Same goes with things that happen in the world. They're all cyclical. Okay, believe it or not. So I'll leave that with you. Any questions? Anyone of you that are watching this video actually want to reach out to myself or anyone from the team, please just go to our Facebook page, which you're probably watching this video on, or maybe our Instagram. Just reach out to us. I'm more than happy to reach out and actually give you a lending hand or give you a bit of advice if you are looking for that. Okay. Thank you once again, and we'll see you next week.